All right, here we are on another episode of Flipping Houses for Rookies.
Here we are. Good morning, Bill.
How's everything?
Everything is okay. How about you?
January, it's cold, man.
Oh, wait till tomorrow.
Yeah.
Tomorrow's going to be horrible.
I took the grand tour yesterday just to make sure, cup of iced tea and big fat cigar and long ride to go check on the houses to make sure they all got heat and oil and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
Episode number 238, Peter. 238. The name of this episode is called Rookie's Dictionary for Creative Real Estate Terms Most Needed and Wanted.
Oh, that sounds like a good idea.
Part one.
Oh, part one. Oh, okay.
It wasn't part one until I started writing it.
And okay, an hour and a half later, that's enough, right?
Yeah.
Stay tuned next week for further instructions.
In order to create real estate deals correctly and professionally, you must speak the language accurately, flawlessly, and with complete fluency. You have heard me explain multiple times, it is not the math that makes a deal, but the language and conversation that makes unbelievable deals. Most often we learn how to speak a dialect by listening to others speak. And this is the beginning of the problem that runs rampant in creative real estate production and results. I find many words and terms are largely unknown by most investors, and yet most don't even know it.
No, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't know.
And often this is done by investors to impress their listeners. Realize this, for those who are literate in this industry, using those words or phrases incorrectly are a big red flag.
Mm-hmm.
They say knowledge is power. Well, what you are about to absorb and learn in this podcast will be the hard, cold facts that can give you the quantum leap that you have been seeking for some time now. And I beg you to listen several times, plus at least once take good notes to reference back to when needed.
Gee, but I think I'm going to like this podcast.
I figured you would.
Yeah. Words are good.
Strange enough, I had something happen to me a few weeks ago that prompted me to do this podcast. And believe me, I've talked myself in and out of it because this is not going to be one of those popular podcasts that has a title that everybody's going to want to come and watch or see.
Right.
This is not one of those popular things, right? In fact, here we are. We probably only have a couple listeners. By now we have plenty, right?
Well, Bill, my 2 cents for you listeners who are thinking listening or not, if you were that successful, you'd know what's important. If you're not that successful, you don't know what's important.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, I know where you're going with this. We haven't even talked about it, but I can tell this is important. I'm an educator. Bill knows a lot about study, learning, and education. This is important. Sit down, listen.
Good. So anyways, I was on the phone with my attorney a few weeks ago, going over a contract. And in the language, there was a word I didn't know.
Oh, that's easy in a contract. Are you going to tell us what it is or later?
I forgot. It was several weeks ago. I forgot what the word was.
Hey,
I tried to remember it, and I couldn't remember what the new word was. It's not important, I think.
That's completely standard. When you don't understand something like that, that's what happens. It disappears and you can't remember it. When you read the page, you get to the bottom, it's blank. Yeah, that whole story. Like, what did I read? Yeah. It disappears because you don't know what the heck you're doing. So, oh boy.
So I asked him to explain. Like, Tell me, what is that? What is that word? I never heard that before.
Really? In a contract? I thought you've seen all of these things.
So to my demise,
Hmm.
there was dead silence on the call.
Oh, no, he didn't know either?
His response was, it
Oh,
must have been language written before that I don't know. I don't know what it means.
wow.
I'm thinking, what?
Yeah.
I thought I was paying you as an attorney to have a complete excellent index of words and compile them correctly so I could be safe.
That's right. Yeah, no surprises that way.
So when they go under the judge's scrutiny, there's not some like misused word.
Yeah. Oh, gee, I thought it meant something else. You know what they say? Too bad.
Yeah,
They don't say, oh,
exactly.
that's okay. You didn't understand. We'll let you go home now. Yeah, well,
Boy,
Bill, they say ignorance is no excuse in the law, right?
that's right.
No,
That's
right.
right. In a
Ignorance,
courtroom.
no.
In a courtroom.
Yeah.
I've been there before.
Sorry.
Boy, this was an eye opener, Peter. This was
Oh,
a
God.
big eye opener. So I did my usual contemplating with my cigar, or in this case, several cigars.
Oh, geez.
And here's what I came up with. Not only will this be extremely beneficial for our listeners, but once we're done recording this, I can have it transcribed and used for the multiple books that I plan to release this year as a glossary.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, I have a book that's called The No Loan Real Estate Dealomics. That's coming out. Okay.
Dealomics.
Yeah. It's like right now it's like 500 pages. Okay.
What?
And it explains lease options and it's all the deal structuring.
Holy crap! 500 pages.
Maybe 400 pages, right?
Oh, it's only 4. Bill, does it have a lot of pictures?
No.
Oh, shit.
But I put it in 16 font for us old bastards, so we don't have to wear our glasses.
Okay, thanks. And not scare the people with the small print. That's good too.
For the boomers, and it's 7 by 7. It's the big page, 7 by 11, or 17 by it's big. It's big. It's
11
a big
by 17. Holy crap!
it's a big book, right? Then I have New Era Creative Real Estate Hunting 5.0 coming out.
5.0.
Yeah. Then I have negotiation.
Wait a minute. What?
Negotiation. Getting the best deals, which is all about negotiating. And then I have a private money book that I'm working on that I haven't named yet. And I have actually, I don't know why I didn't do this, but the No Loan Real Estate Dealomics will come out first. Right behind that, I have a subject to book that is unprecedented. I have looked literally for at least a couple of years. I do this several times a year. I try to go find a book on subject to deals and the details and can't find one. So this is going to be the first ever hit the market. And I got to tell you, this book is probably I'm going to go down in history known for this book, I think. Because I did the seminar twice. I did it for Israel and for the American group, coaching group. And the responses I've gotten back from it, how I do it, what I do is like just amazing. Plus, very soon I will be releasing my monthly printed newsletter called Investology, which it's actually called Investology with Creative Real Estate Transactions. This will be a print only product that will provide about probably minimum 20 pages. It'll be 20, 25 pages or more. And it's just cold hard facts not found anywhere else about the inner workings of deal structuring. It's as if I were to sit with my coaching group each month in a private room, do masterminding, and this is what will come out of it. Right?
So that sounds like more details?
Yeah. Plus it's print. So, it's not a course. It's not anything like that. It's kind of like, a toilet read where you can read it in a sitting or two. No pun intended. You know what I mean? But it's meant so that when I print it, it will have 3 holes in it. So you can put it in a binder and turn it into it'll be like your field guide for doing deals. right?
So more practical.
Oh, it's all practical.
Yeah. So because we're pretty philosophical on our podcast and some information like the general ideas, but this is going to be maybe a little more hands-on, practical.
Well, let me
Examples.
help you with what you're asking because I can make it real
Yeah.
simple. So
Yeah.
the podcast, I tell you what to do.
Yeah.
In these newsletters, I'll show you what to do.
Or how to do it.
I'm sorry, how to do it. How to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, on the podcast we tell you what to do. I'm all confused. In the newsletter, to show you how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. Woo, you
Well,
think
that's
I like
something
that.
that you bumped into maybe a year ago. You explained to me like marketing is like that. You see these things on Facebook and on television. Do the hey, this, that, the other. They don't tell you how to do it. They just say this can happen. You go, oh, I want that, and but you don't know really how. So
Right.
that's important. So I mean, you can't explain how to do things that simply in little podcasts or little commercials on TV or Facebook. So there's a backup of the details that people need to do anything correctly. So I get it. So combined, the picture is complete.
So, anyways, when we get done with this episode and probably the next one, I hope there's not a third one, but I'll transcribe it. I'll get it all, and this will be a glossary of terms that anybody could use whenever they want. Okay.
Cool.
So, anyways, at the verse, so once I have it transcribed, you can see it in the back of any one of our books, and there you go.
Okay.
Okay. So that's not why we're here. So let's get down to business.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try to do this in alphabetical order here, okay? So if it's not exactly in alphabetical order because my, alphabet is out of whack or something like that, don't send me a support ticket and let me know that. I'm just going to try to do it that way, okay?
Okay.
So here we go.
So
Number
I won't
one.
say anything, right? I won't say anything. No comments from me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's impossible. So first word, appraisal.
Mm-hmm.
This is an attempt to determine the value of a specific property and is only opinion, but is used for things like, now this is what's going to probably tip your hat back, Pete. You ready? So this is what it's used for. I'm just going to read what I wrote here.
Yeah.
Okay, because there's a list. Okay.
Ooh.
You ready?
Yeah.
Here's what appraisals are used for: insurance coverage, damage claims, inheritance tax, how much the asset should be purchased for, separate valuations like land and building, compensation a government will use if it's taking the property for like a highway, so eminent domain.
Right.
Or it doesn't have to be a highway, it could be anything else, but they're going to give you fair market value, they're going to do an appraisal, right?
Yep.
A base for a loan amount, right? I don't know what the hell I wrote here. Shares comparison. I don't even know what that means. Saves comparison. I don't even know what that means. Or
Okay.
how much would it cost to build another one like it?
Sure.
Right. Or finally, for investors' needs, such as capitalization or annual income.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I got it. It was sales comparison.
Oh,
Sales
right.
comparison.
Right.
So I'm going to do that again. So it's insurance coverage, damage claims, inheritance tax, how much the assets should be purchased for, separate valuations like land and building, compensation a government will use if taking the property for a highway or some sort of eminent domain, a base for a loan amount, sales comparison, or how much it would cost to build another one like it, or finally, for investors' needs such as capitalization or annual income.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure I understand capitalization. Is that like how much the property is increasing, how much capital is increasing? Can you explain that a little? Because I don't know that one.
So the definition is going to be later, but I will read it right now.
Yeah, sometimes that happens in the middle of one definition, like another word comes up.
So I did capital gains.
Yeah.
You know what capital gains is?
Yeah.
So capital gains is essentially the profit that you make when you sell real estate.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what capitalization would be.
Yeah. The increasing of the value of something. Okay, that's what I thought. I want to be sure.
Let me look it up.
And that's what we do. You know, with phones now, if you're doing anything, reading anything, you're doing a real estate deal, you're reading a book and you don't know something, get your phone, type it in, see what it says.
So I'm
It'll
glad we
save
did
yourself
this
a lot of
because I,
trouble.
I had the wrong definition. So capitalization is the provision of capital for the property.
Oh, getting the capital. Oh, getting the capital you need, like to buy it.
Yeah. So it says the provision of capital for a company or the conversion of income or assets into capital.
Right. So capitalization would be taking your physical item, whatever it is, and turning it into money, turning it into capital, which can be considered money that you can buy things with. Is that about right?
No, I think it's the other way around. So capitalization would be you're taking your money and your assets and turn it into real estate.
Yeah. No, I thought
So
I thought the second half of that had another piece.
So the
Right.
provision of capital for a company or the conversion of income or assets into capital.
Okay. Good. All right. Now I got it. So see, this is the point you're making. This is the whole point of today's show. And I'm not even trying to give you a hard time or like stop the show. This is how Bill and I do it. Like if we're going along, like, wait a minute, what does that mean? Otherwise, you won't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're talking about, or somebody's trying to explain to you. You'd be like a deer in the headlights. So we stop, we look at what it says, we go, okay, that's clear, and we move on.
So capitalization is taking usually cash or some asset and putting it into real estate and making that the new capital.
Good.
That's the new asset that you're acquiring. And the appraisal is the process to make sure that you're not over capitalizing.
Yeah, you need to how much
overspending.
yeah, how much? Yeah. How much is it? How much do I need to put in? Right.
Yeah.
Like anything. How much was the bill for the food tonight? What's your share? You know, whatever. Okay, that's good. That's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Next word. Appreciation. This term is applied to the increase in value of the property from one time to another.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It is often referred to as the future value. Right? So when you're comparing statistics, right? Suppose like the stock market compares statistics, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are they doing? They're comparing today's statistics to something that happened in the past.
Right.
So yesterday it was 3, the day before it was 5, the day before it was 7, right? And today it's 10.
Yep.
So a present time value or statistic is only as good as one in the past.
Right. It's a comparison, right?
Yeah. So it's something that actually happened.
Mm.
It was a end product or end goal of something. It resulted in a tangible, physical, countable number.
Yeah.
Right. That's a statistic. So what this does is what that said, the term is applied to the increase in value of the property from one time to another.
Mm-hmm.
So, today it might be worth 100,000, but 3 years ago it might have been worth 150, and 10 years before that it might have been worth 20.
Right.
So, appreciation is the opposite of depreciation, which is the same definition. Instead of it having an increase in value, it's got a decrease in value.
Right.
Depreciation does, right?
Sure.
So what you're looking at is in present time, what is the valuation of it compared to the past?
Right.
And that's the appreciation, which of course, appreciation in the value is also connected to how much profit you're going to make or not make.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Which I'm going to go over that in a couple minutes. Make sense?
Sure.
Here's one. This is probably one of the most confused words in the vocabulary, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Arm's length transaction.
Oh, yeah.
Arm's length transaction.
Yeah,
This
I have,
term,
I have a
this,
general idea, but it's a legal thing. You got to get it right, huh?
yeah, this term is used to mean to have no collusion involved.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Collusion involved. Maybe I should look up the word collusion.
Yeah,
You know
that's
what
a
that
loaded
means?
word. Yeah, we hear too much of that. Well, it reminds me of something like if you want to buy stocks and trying to figure which one is really going to be good, you're not supposed to find out from somebody on the inside who knows something's coming up and they tip you off, because you'd be like dealing with somebody on the inside getting tips that's no one else has, and that's not fair. So you're colluding, we have collusion with somebody, you're kind of conspiring to make a deal that you shouldn't know about, and you
Right.
have an unfair advantage.
Right, exactly. So the definition is a secret or illegal cooperation or conspiracy,
Mm.
especially in order to cheat or deceive others.
So can you give a simple, short example of how somebody would do that?
If you give me a minute, yeah. So this term is used to mean to have no collusion involved
Mm-hmm.
in the transaction. It is about two strangers engaging in a deal without inside knowledge or relationship.
Mm.
It is not a husband, wife, father, son, corporation to subsidiaries. Arm's length means further than your arm or outside of your reach.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So arm's length is outside. So it's further than most people think when they hear arm's length, it's within the arm. In other words, it's close to you and you know what it is. And
No.
it's opposite. Opposite is arm's length. It's further than your reach. Like I said, there's no collusion, right? There's no illegal cooperation or conspiracy to like try to cheat the bank or deceive the sellers or buyers or mostly the buyers.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it's mostly the bank. It's so you don't deceive the bank. So the bank. So you get some big deal the bank is going to fund. And the bank is very touchy about that because obviously we know from past podcasts that the bank feels that their money is superior than everybody else's and they're the only ones that have it. So, they take it very personal when you try to pull one over on them. And arm's length is their way of saying we won't do the transaction if it's not arm's length.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was selling Jesse a 2-family house a couple of years ago, and I had trouble with that because my mortgage broker, who was in fear to begin with, he was afraid of his own shadow, kept worrying about the arm's length portion of the deal.
Well, there must be a way to do that if it happens by just being completely upfront about it or something, or just having all the data available. It's got to be a way to do it, isn't there?
Yeah. And he just didn't know that. And at the time, I ended up getting a private lender, and she got a better deal anyway. So
Okay.
All right, ready? We're going to go on next to the next one.
Yep.
Assumable loan.
Mm.
Assumable loan.
Mm-hmm.
Assume means take or begin to have the power or responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
So assume means to take or begin to have power or responsibility.
Right.
Or as I say, accept. So you're going to accept it.
Yeah.
You're going to accept the power. You're going to accept the responsibility, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now here's the interesting that people don't get. Most FHA and VA loans are usually assumable by the underlying terms with the proper approval process.
Mm-hmm.
So you can assume a VA loan or FHA loan if you apply and qualify.
Oh.
And so many people don't know that's true. Right?
Yeah.
Now, here's what's interesting, Peter. Our getting the deed deal or subject to deals are like this. Right? Except we don't go through the bank's approval process. We skip that part. Right? And that's the magic of doing subject to.
Yeah, I know the way you've been doing it, and I've been involved in some of those and helped do it, but I never realized because we do it our own way Well, you figured out that there was a way to do it through the bank with their permission or whatever the heck.
Right. So
Okay.
if you go to flippinghousesforrookies.com, right on the front page, there's a course that I offer for free, right? That you should definitely go get, because it should really be charged for, but I've been doing it for so long that I prefer people understand it. So it's called Creative Real Estate Deal Making 101. Creative deal. I'll give that to you again. Creative Real Estate Deal Making 101. It's right on the front page. It's to the left of the pretty girl holding money. All you have to do is put your name and email address in there. And there's a few hours, probably about 3 hours with the training in there that explains not only how to structure the deals, but when you sell them, how you make money, where you make your money. It shows you all the results. It shows you how to sell them. It shows you how to buy them. It shows you how to do all that. By the way, this is the people portion. I'm sorry. This is the mathematical portion of the deal structuring. It's not the people portion. Okay?
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's all the numbers, all the number part.
You can also get that if you go into the description of wherever you're watching this podcast. There's a link there. Just click on that. It takes you to the free stuff page. Problem with the free stuff page is you have to log in to them all separately. So if you're looking to just get right to the chase and want to learn what subject 2 is, just click on the link inside your description of wherever you found this podcast or this recording, and there's a link in there, and you can click on that, and it'll take you right to the free stuff page, which has over 25 different documents and videos and checklists and scripts and all kinds of stuff there. But if you do that, you scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page, there's a video there that says getting the deed or subject 2, and you can watch it there. Right? Mm-hmm. Enough of that. Next one, Peter. Buy-sell agreements.
Wow, never heard of that one.
Buy-sell agreements or purchase and sales agreement is what we call it a lot.
Okay.
It depends on which part of the country you're in.
Okay.
This is a contract between the buyer and the seller that clarifies to everyone involved in the deal how the transaction is expected to go between the buyer and seller's original verbal agreement. It is the roadmap to swapping the deed from the sellers to the buyers in the closing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm going to read that again. This is a contract between the buyers and the sellers that clarifies to everyone involved in the deal how the transaction is expected to go between the buyer and the seller's original verbal agreement. In other words, a proposal, right? Mm-hmm. It is the roadmap that shows the steps or shows what's expected to happen at the closing table when the deed goes from the seller to the buyer. So basically, it's like the program or the checklist, if you want, to get everything prepared for the closing. Now, I'm not going to sabotage this podcast right now. Good morning, Jamie. I'm not going to sabotage this podcast right now, but I could tell you, I promise you, and I will not do this to our listeners, but I promise with my right hand on a Bible, that I could probably do the next 3, 4, 5 podcasts on this one point, on how this does not happen, how this purchase and sales agreement is discarded, misunderstood, and they get to the closing and they're not prepared. I can't tell you how many in my hundreds of deals I've done, the delays and the problems because somebody didn't pay attention to this document far enough in advance. Because here's what happens in Connecticut, this wonderful, I'm being I'm being passive aggressive right now. This wonderful crappy state that we have, which, by the way, the state is beautiful. It's the most wonderful place in the world to live, but the government is not exactly on our side when it comes to real estate. Okay, so
it wouldn't be so annoying if it was always like this. But when I was a kid, I saw a video on PBS. They were flying over the state. They're showing how great it was, all the factories, all the work. It was wonderful. There's
Yeah.
plenty of money. We were not in debt as a state. It was totally amazing. Like 40 years ago, amazing. Everything running like a humming top now. So that's the annoying part. It's not like, oh, it's always kind of screwed up here.
Yeah.
You know? No, it was great.
Anyways, my point is that we are a judicial state, so we use attorneys to close, and attorneys will get on average. I mean, there's lowers and higher, but it's $700-800 for a closing.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what happens: the paralegal, who is the lawyer's secretary, right?
Yeah.
Does a majority of the work. The lawyer doesn't look at the case until sometimes just days before, because he's making $700-800 an hour. At $125 an hour, $150 an hour, he's not spending weeks on this case.
Mm-hmm.
Which, by the way, my attorney, which may not be my attorney too much longer if he doesn't start straightening out, does sometimes 3 or 4 closings in a day. I've had Fridays where he told me he did 5 closings in one day.
Ouch.
So, and he's got a paralegal that works part-time. He does most of it himself. So this guy is just inundated with like stuff. So they're not paying attention to the file.
Yeah.
Okay? And again, I honest to God, we could do podcast after podcast after podcast with just doing examples of what happened to me.
I know what you mean. To call in the morning, hey, where's this? Where's that? What's the water bill? Wait a minute, where's the taxes? How much you owe on that? Oh yeah, the morning of. Sure.
So in my opinion, in my own slang words, because we all know that my grammar and my use of words,
your grandma and your grandpa.
Yeah, my use of words are not always, from the most educated schools for sure, right? But my way of explaining the purchase and sales agreement is the steering wheel of the deal. So what you need to do is A, write a good one, and B, use it to guide the deal with. Because what it does, the biggest thing is it takes a handshake deal or a verbal commitment and it puts it into writing. Or if you don't know the person because you are doing an arm's length deal, what it does is it wakes them up, like on the MLS, you send them a purchase and sales agreement saying, this is what I'm willing to do. And if they sign it, then they are willing to do it too. So very often a purchase and sales agreement is used as a proposal, much like a letter of intent, which we'll cover next week. But a letter of intent is just that. It's a letter, something in writing on what you intend to do. Mm-hmm. The letter of intent gets transposed into the purchase and sales contract. Both people sign it, and then because you put a deposit down, which we're going to talk about that in a minute, when you put a deposit down, it makes it legal.
Yep.
Okay. Enough on that?
Yeah, the other thing I want to add, just a little small point. When I first saw purchase and sales, it confused me a little bit because I had never seen something that was both. It's always, I'm buying something, I have a purchase, or I'm selling something, I have a sale. But in this case, it actually says how it's being purchased and sold. So one person is selling it, one person is purchasing it. So they're both in there, just in case it seems funny. Because it wasn't like an obvious thing to me. It just seemed a little odd. Just kind of weird, but that's what it is. One guy's selling, one guy's buying, so they're both in there, the purchase and the sale.
It's the conclusion of both parties.
Right, and we don't usually do those. We do one or the other, so this is both happening, and the contract covers both sides of that. I finally go, okay, that's why they call it that. Weird point, but you see it, you don't use it until you use it. Until you use it, it's not as realistic. But that's fine. That's my 2 cents. Okay.
So just to give you an idea. How this is used. I have a coaching client that told me the other day, which I think is extremely genius.
Huh?
They do a lot of. He does probably 7 or 8 wholesale deals a month.
Yeah.
Him and his brother. They're in Texas.
The boys in Texas.
Yeah. So here's what happens. They actually talk to somebody on the phone. They write purchase a sales agreement. They upload it to DocuSign and send it to their sellers. Mm-hmm. The other night, he tells me what they're doing is they're sending these documents to people they haven't even spoken to. So they upload the purchase and sales agreement into DocuSign, which is like a software to sign documents electronically. A lot of realtors use it. So just go to DocuSign is DocuSign.com, DocuSign, right?
Yeah.
John, yeah. John says he needs to hook up with those Texas fellas. Yeah. In any event, what happens is they find these properties and they just send the purchase and sales agreement in DocuSign, and the people that sign them are the ones that they call. They use it as a pre-screening device.
That's crazy.
So there's many ways to use a purchase and sales agreement. Okay.
Well, it shows them that they're serious, huh?
Yeah, totally.
I bet it gets their attention. Huh? Imagine that.
So, anyways, capital gains. Capital gains is the next word. So this, and I just read this a minute ago. This is essentially the profit that you make when you sell the property, the real estate. Okay, it is based on purchase price. Okay, plus capital improvements minus allowable depreciation. So what's a capital improvement?
Tell me.
You don't know? Okay, so capital improvement is so if I were to go in and paint the house, the inside of the house, is that a capital improvement?
Well, it's increasing the capital, I guess, like the value, which would produce more capital.
It's a trick question. So it's not a capital improvement. Because it's just changing the aestheticness or the way it looks.
So you're not adding something, you're just changing something.
A permanent fixture.
Yeah.
So like if I put a new furnace in, that's a capital improvement because it's going to stay there for 30 years.
Right. You're replacing something, but it's not just aesthetic. It's a fun, like would a roof count?
A roof would be a capital improvement.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, a new kitchen would be a capital improvement.
Right.
Because you can't change it. Like, so paint or a rug, you know, an owner can come in and change anytime they want. Like a tenant can change that.
Yeah.
But they're not going to change the furnace. So it's a permanent fixture that will stay with the house that if it was missing would decrease the value of the house.
Right. And if you add a new one, like when we do renovations, brand new furnace, brand new roof, that increases the value. So that's a better indication.
Yeah, so that's plus that's capital improvements. Like for example, when we're doing apartment building evaluations, we talk about capital improvements of $300 per door.
Right.
Figuring that we might have to go in and put a new kitchen in.
Right.
It's not a refrigerator or a stove or a microwave. Because those could be removed.
Oh.
Right.
Okay.
But the kitchen sink can't be. I mean, it could be removed, but then it would reduce the value of the property significantly.
Right. Well, it's a permanent fixture. It's not just roll it out.
A toilet or a tub is a capital improvement.
Okay.
Tiles stuck to the wall is a capital improvement.
Oh.
Right. Not the washer and dryer in the basement. That's not a capital improvement.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to read that again. So this is essentially the profit that you make when you sell real estate. It is based on purchase price. Right? So pay attention to that. That's because that's magic. What is a purchase price?
Well, the price that you paid for it as your baseline. Okay. That's your baseline. Yeah.
So I'm going to cover this in the word equity because you're going to be, I don't think you know this because I've never talked about this, but I've known it. I've just never talked about it.
Okay.
So purchase price means the cash that hit the closing table. It's not an evaluation. It's not an appraisal. It's not anything. It's the actual money that hit the closing table.
Yeah.
It's the real value. It's not an appraisal. It's not equity. It's not any of that stuff. It's it's really worth.
That's all theoretical. You can say whatever you want, but you know, show me the cash, right?
Right. So let me read that again. So it is based on purchase price plus capital improvements minus allowable depreciation. That's capital gains. It is calculated from net sale proceeds minus the original purchase price plus capital improvements.
So do you have, somebody brought this up in something I'm doing with my own house. The capital improvements, is that something that you get or you lose?
You get.
Yeah. So do they count that with the purchase price? I guess I'm saying. And
Okay, so what don't you understand here? Because I think you were spending too much time thinking about your question, not listening to me.
No,
listen.
Go ahead.
Stop.
Go ahead.
It is calculated from the sales proceedings. So what did you get at the closing?
Mm-hmm.
Minus the original purchase price.
Mm-hmm.
Plus capital improvements.
So you're adding that. That's right. What I wasn't sure. So you're adding that.
That's what plus means. Yeah.
Yeah. Minus plus. Okay.
The remaining portion is your capital gains caused by the reduction in the basis of the depreciation as an expense deducted against the income. So this is a tough one, and I worried about when I wrote that having to explain this. So you pay $50,000 for a house.
Yep.
You spend $25,000 in capital improvement.
70,000. Oh, sorry. I'm just adding
75. So you spend $25,000. I forgot what I just said. So let's say it's $25,000. So you paid 50. You put $25,000 in capital improvement.
Mm-hmm.
You sell for 100.
Mm-hmm.
So that means you would take the 100. You would minus the 50.
Mm-hmm.
So how much do we have left?
50,000. Mm-hmm.
Plus the $75,000.
I just got lost.
I'm sorry, plus the 25,000 because I said 75. Plus the 25,000.
Yeah.
So I'm confusing everybody. So
well, it's hard. It's hard for you too.
We're going to take the 100,000 minus the 50.
Yeah.
Okay. So that means we have a $50,000 gain.
Mm-hmm.
Plus the capital improvement. Now it's 75,000.
Hmm.
That's our gain.
Okay. Something about that doesn't seem fair.
Well, think of it this way. If you had the $25,000 in your bank, it's an asset, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to pay taxes on your assets, don't you?
Yeah.
So you're just taking it from the bank and putting it into the property. It's still an asset.
Oh, I know. Wait. So wouldn't you add the 25,000 capital gains to the $25,000 profit and come up with 50?
I don't know, Peter.
Because you shouldn't add it to the 50.
You're right. Oh my God.
Yeah, because I feel like, wait a minute.
I am supposed to be teaching everybody, and I don't even know myself.
Hey,
so,
Bill, that's my job. Between the two of us, we're almost a whole person. We figure it out. That's what I tell my wife all the time. If we work hard.
So let's do this again. So it is calculated from the net sales proceeds minus the original purchase price plus capital improvements.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right.
Okay, that would seem more fair. So you pay on 25,000 then.
Right. Yes, that's what I was trying to say. Yeah. So if you had $100,000, you minus the 50 that you paid for it, plus you add the 25 to that 50 that you paid for it. That's why it's confusing. Okay, I got it. Yeah. So you have 25 left.
Right, and you pay taxes on that.
Taxes on the 25, unless you've had the property for some time and had depreciation on it.
Right.
That's the final piece. So you can't have depreciation and a tax gain at the same time. You can't take it twice. So let's say you made $5,000 in depreciation gain the year before because you've owned it for 15 months.
Yeah.
So that 25,000 would be $25,000 worth of profit, and you can't then take the depreciation again. You can't take it twice.
Okay.
So you would add the depreciation portion back in, and it would be taxed.
Yeah, I went over this the other day briefly with my lawyer about my own house that I'm selling. That's where it came up. And that's the first time the whole idea of like doing all that math. But I'm glad I have him to do that for me when it
Yeah,
comes
exactly.
push comes to shove, and my accountant to come up with the best numbers possible, because they do okay in the end. That's why we hire those guys.
So I apologize for confusing everybody, because I was doing it in my head instead of on paper, and that's the first mistake. So hopefully you got that. If not, send me a support ticket. Go to flippinghousesforrookies.com. Top right-hand side, there's a support ticket. Just send me a support ticket. But I apologize for the confusion. Next word, or next term, is cash on cash return.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm just going to read it, because this is extremely important to everybody listening or reading this right now.
Mm-hmm.
Most think ROI, return on investment, is the holy grail. But the truth is, cash on cash return outweighs return on investment a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is where you calculate the relationship between the property's cash flow against the initial capital investment.
Mm-hmm.
This percentage is the real return on most deals.
Yeah.
Okay, so when I get to the word equity, this is going to make a lot of sense, because there's two types of equity. There's cash equity and there's investor equity. But I'm going to explain that in a minute.
Sure.
So what I'm saying here is that one thing that I learned the hard way after buying $1.8 million worth of real estate, and actually not buying, holding $1.8 million worth of real estate, and having barely $2,000 a month in cash flow, what happened is I was equity stupid.
Mm-hmm.
I was buying these properties thinking that equity meant something.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, equity's on paper, isn't it? It's not money in your pocket. It's on paper.
Equity is a
idea.
promise to appear.
Yeah, it's a maybe.
Promise to appear. So when you need to fix something, or you need cash flow, or you need money, equity can't be spent.
Right.
By the way, equity is slow money.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So equity is, I have to put the house on the market and it takes you 6 months to sell it. That's slow money.
Yeah.
Cash flow is fast money.
Yeah. So for example, in my family, with me and my wife, I'm happy with cash flow, but I'm happy if I see that I'm building equity, so someday I'll have a chunk of money. The wife, she's a bookkeeper, goes, "Where's the cash? Where's the cash?" Yeah. No, honey, we only bought it for no money down. And look, we have $30,000 equity in that property, and it didn't cost us a dime. She goes, "Where's the cash? Where's the cash?" It'll show up, honey. In a year or two, when we need it, cha-ching, and we'll have $50,000. She goes, "How about today?" Hang on, sweetheart. A little patience. And then we go do some cash deals as well, and cash flow deals. But it's not money in your hand right now.
So I'm going to tell you the story that you just told everybody is the biggest problem in the real estate business.
Mm-hmm.
And this is no disrespect to you, Peter, but you are money motivated.
Mm-hmm.
You want money now. You think that money now, chunks of dough, is the solution. And
No.
I'm here to tell you that that's wrong.
No, I'm not saying that. If you listen to what I said was,
I'm going to get
my wife and I like having the equity there, but I like having cash flow now. I like actually having a little bit of all of it. I don't want just one or just the other. I'll take a little bit.
So that's recent, but the first couple of years that we were working together, all you wanted was $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. I got to pay off my debt. That's all you kept telling me.
Yeah. Right? Which was just a short-term problem at the time. Yeah, but some people are in that boat. They're just up shit's creek. Sorry, and their kind of attention is there. But if you look at the big picture and just do everything and just do what you can, everything works out.
So basically, the reason why most people are attracted to real estate is because you can work once and get paid multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
There's not too many industries that can do that. So this, ladies and gentlemen, is the exact reason why simplicity is the sword that can go through 50 feet of steel, because it's truth. Truth goes through this truth. The sword of truth goes through 50 feet of steel, much like that. What is it, Excalibur, where the guy pulls the knife, pulls the sword out of the stone. Right?
Yep.
When you have this magic, you can do that. And the problem with it is that when you hear things that I'm about to say, they seem too simple, and you discard them because you're thinking that's not powerful enough.
Yeah.
I need more tricks. I need more power.
Yeah.
It's not sexy enough. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So this is something that we talk about all the time, because after getting through $1.8 million worth of real estate and realizing I had a freaking mess on my hands, which took me, by the way, I think 3 years to immediately fix it and 5 years to totally resolve it. And I'm here to tell you that it's probably 12 years later and I still own 3 of those houses.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was back in 2008, years and years ago, right? Back then?
It was before then. It was up to 2008. 2008 is when I started depleting them. We had 26 houses at the time when we started depleting them.
Yeah.
Right? So here's my point. Money now, money monthly, money later.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on which one or which ones of those things the deal produces is how much time you spend in the deal.
Right.
So it's a time versus value ratio. So like in a slot deal, the sandwich lease option, and if you don't know what a slot deal is, go to Flipping Houses for Rookies, right? Go into the front page, the Creative Real Estate Deal Making 101 course, and it'll explain it. But a slot deal is a sandwich lease option transfer. So you go find a lease option from a seller and you transfer it to your buyer. You don't stay in the deal. The buyer pays the sellers. You just get a fee for doing it. Right? So you make $3,000, $5,000, $10,000. Usually $3,000 to $5,000 is common on a house less than $150,000. Right?
Sure.
So that's money now. There's no money. There's no money monthly. There's no money later.
Yep.
Right? So the rest of the deals, like for example, the lease option is much like the rent to own or the lease option program is much like the slot deal, except now you're staying in because you're going to get 15% worth of equity and you're going to get 20 or 25% with the cash flow. So now it takes that slot deal and it turns into a lease option deal, which means that you would have money now, the non-refundable deposit of $3 to $10 grand, usually depending on the price of the house. It's 3 to 5% of your sale price. Then you're going to have your money monthly, which is your spread between what you're paying your seller and what you're collecting.
Yep.
Then you're going to have money later, which is your equity.
Okay. And now sells.
So I want to go back to money now doesn't always have to be non-refundable deposit. When I buy my flips or when I buy houses subject to, or I do owner financing, like for example, one of the things that a lot of people are afraid of is when they're doing owner financing, and I'm way off topic here, but when we're doing owner financing, right, the seller might ask for a deposit and people are like, oh, well, you know what? The thing to do is if they want a deposit, you have to reduce their monthly payments so that you can afford to go find somebody with an IRA, a retirement plan or something that will lend you money and you can pay them monthly. Now, here's an interesting thing. Money now, just to show you the creativeness of it, right? Suppose they want 10 grand down and suppose you borrow 15 grand. You would have $5,000 of money now, right? Sure. So where a lot of people like duck from, they got to give the seller a deposit. It's actually a profit center if you do it correctly. Right? Because the difference between a $10,000 and a $15,000 payment is not that much money. It won't kill the deal, especially if you figure $15,000 and you make the seller take less money to cover the $15,000. Then you got a pretty good deal.
Yep.
Right?
Well, one of the things I learned from you is if something comes up that seems to be a problem or a deterrent, not exactly what you want, if you look at it a few different ways, you come up with a way to benefit from it or monetize it or find a way to make it work. So, I mean, who's not happy the way you just explained it? You got some money, the seller got some money, and the lender's got some money. So if you're just clever and use some of your ideas, it's okay. Just come up with a solution.
So basically, what I do is I take the seller's initiative
Mm-hmm.
or their end goal, and I reverse engineer it.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically what I do. Okay.
You just
The
find a
point,
creative,
the
you
point
find a
that we're
creative way to do it.
right. So the point is cash on cash return is how much cash have you put into the deal,
Mm.
right? So
Mhm.
often we put $100 into a deal, so our cash on cash return is infinite. I mean,
Yeah.
imagine doing a lease option and making 10 grand now, 300 or 400 a month, and 30 grand on the back end. That's an infinite return on $100 investment, which is why we teach what we teach, because it's just, and there's very low risk. There's no credit check on you. And it's just a matter of listening to 237 podcasts to figure out how to talk to somebody. You know what I mean? That's pretty much what it is. It's a slow grind, but once you get, and honestly, you don't have to listen to any podcast. You could just go out and just start talking to sellers and you can figure it out. You don't need me.
Well, I guess you're saying it's either listen to you or listen to sellers.
Yeah, do it the hard
But you know what, Bill? It's less scary listening to you.
Yeah, there you go.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
People are a little scared to listen to sellers, but you can listen to a seller. It's actually free. They don't charge you anything, and they don't make you buy the house.
That's right.
And lose money. They don't make you do anything. So
That's right.
go meet people.
And they don't call up the real estate police and said you did something wrong and pull your license.
They don't have that, do they?
No.
Okay.
Next term, certificate of title.
Uh-huh.
Believe it or not, there is no such thing in real estate.
Well, I don't think I've ever heard that in anything we're doing.
Okay.
What is it?
So a title is often confused with the word deed.
Okay.
Okay. So what most people are talking about is title insurance, which is a company that insures the past filings on the named property are actually correct.
Mm.
If not, the title will fix it, because once you go in a chain of title, you're there forever.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me go on to the next term, and I'm going to talk about them together. Okay.
Sure.
So the next term is chain of title.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this refers to the consecutive transfers of the title.
Yeah.
Now, pay attention to this, because this is the educational point.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. A deed owns the property. A deed owns the property. The title is the right to own the deed.
See, that makes a little sense, because title, does that refer to your name as your title?
Well, like I preach in many other places, there's only 4 entities that can own a piece of real estate.
Mm-hmm.
That's a person's name, a business like a LLC, S corporation, C corporation.
Mm-hmm.
Third one is a partnership, and the fourth one is a trust. Those are all titles.
Right.
Those are all titles that own or control the deed. A chain of title keeps track of who those rights were given to and when.
Mm.
Okay, so when you say a certificate of title, there isn't one, but there is a title or the rights to own the deed.
Yeah.
That's the title. So when you're saying title insurance, you're insuring who had the rights when.
Mm.
And if there is a problem during the filing of, like, suppose I owned a property for a year and I had title to the property. In other words, I had the deed in my possession and it said that Bill Hawthorne owned this property. So the title is Bill Hawthorne owned this property. I had the rights to legally hold the deed.
Right.
10 years from now, they find out that my attorney made a mistake when he did the filing.
No, that doesn't happen.
Yeah. So now it's 10 years later. I've sold the property. I no longer have the rights. I no longer have the deed. I'm not in control anymore. But the confusion happened during my rights period. So the person that found it is going to demand by law that I fix it. So I'd have to go pay my attorney. I have to go find the attorney, or I have to pay some, and it becomes my problem.
Yeah.
Because it happened under my watch. So what title insurance does is it buys insurance so that if that does happen, you call your title insurance company and they go fix it, because that's what you paid the insurance for.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
It's a very confusing area.
So people use that term though sometimes, certificate of title?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I just haven't run into it. I have no title insurance, but if I hear it, I know now not to, I know what it is and what it isn't.
So, Peter, I have bad news for you. Just because you haven't heard of it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. You pompous SOB, you.
In my world, it doesn't.
You pompous SOB, you. All right, let's move on.
Yeah.
Clear title.
Yeah.
There really is no such thing there either. Right? It means the title insurance company has searched the public records and have concluded that they believe that it affect the ownership of that seller will be cleared up once the buyer takes possession. So let me do that again, because you're giving me a puzzled look. So it means the title insurance company has done a search on public records. And it's going to insure the title, because does an insurance company want to take on risk?
No.
So they're looking at, oh, this is a piece of cake. We're going to charge, $800-900 for this title insurance, and we're never going to have to do anything because we searched the title and couldn't find anything.
Yeah.
Right. So basically, once the title is insurable, right, with the title company, that's your clear title. That's the term, is it has a clear title, because the title company did a title search and found nothing wrong with the title. Now, let's be very clear here, because we're going to cover this next week. We also because the title company is doing that. Now here's something that's very clever. The title insurance company has to put title insurance on the title if you're going to buy it. So they go do a search and see how much liability, preferably none, they have. Yeah. They want to make big bucks. Well, because they do that search, and because they're a big company and they have a lot of resources, we use that search to make sure there's not a problem. So when we say we're going to do a title search, it's really done for the insurance company, but we use it as a subsidiary to figure out if there's problems with this deed. Sure. Now hear me loudly, because I'm on the top of the tallest building in your town, yelling as loud as I can right now. These are deals I want. I want deals that cannot be insured by the title company. Personally, if you run across one, please send me a support ticket, and you'll either do the deal yourself and pay me to fix it, or give me the deal and I'll pay you a commission. I want those deals. And being arrogant myself, here's the reason why. I have so much experience with that stuff that I've taken $200,000 houses and paid $27,000 for them because there's title problems, and made $93,000.
I can attest to that.
So for some reason, the way my mind works, which I'm not going to go there, I take that on as a challenge and prefer to have those deals, because here's what happens with those properties. The seller can't fix it. The attorney can't fix it. The title insurance company can't fix it. And often it's not that they can't fix it. It's that they won't put the group of people together. There's not a common denominator of all the communication to gather the data so that it could be accumulated correctly and actually see the solution. Because the lawyer's not going to, because they don't have, they're just charging fees. Nobody has the vested interest of making the property a profit center except you.
Yeah.
So often it's just it's being a private eye and asking questions and getting the right data so that you can pinpoint how to fix the problem, because there's always a solution for a title. You can't have a piece of property that has a problem with the title and it lasts forever. It just can't.
No, the house can't sit there, but you can't even knock it down. You
Right.
have to do that. And it's true, folks. Also, the price of, so because of that, the price of the house comes down. It's a problem. Problems need to be solved, and you get paid to solve problems.
And that's where my specialty shines the most, is fixing title problems. So when I see title problems, man, I stick to that deal like glue. I am all over that deal because I am telling you, I just always figure it out. I've never had one not been figured out.
Oh, can be done.
And the only one we have is the one that you have in right around the corner from you, where we actually have a company that bought a package of loans, and they don't know they own the property, and that's the only one that I've had so far. Which by the way, what did I tell you we should do?
There was a second kind of mortgage. I forgot the name of it.
Yeah.
Kind of a mortgage that you take on it. That if anything happens, they have to notify you because you have a lien on it. You have to find out so you can at least
So it's a house we can't figure out who owns the deed. So we can put a second mortgage on it for $1, right?
Yep.
That says that if any activity happens on this title, they have to notify us and let us know and give us the right to buy out the first mortgage or the liens.
Yep. And I actually just called the town. The town doesn't even know who owns it. And it's been a year, and I've been working with the town, feeding the names that I found, the bank that I found, the numbers that I found, and she's grateful and have a good line with the tax director of the town. I just called yesterday, hey, any updates on that? Because they have their own lawyers looking for who it is. Yeah. And even that's slow. But that's a good idea, because I actually did see somebody parked in front of it in a truck. I don't know if it was the house before, the house after. Looked like some guy looking at it for some reason, as if somebody was checking into it. So it'd be good to have that, because if that was something, we would have found out. Yeah. So we'll talk about that later, I suppose.
It's the lost house. All right, let's move on. Closing cost.
Okay.
So when a property changes hands or is sold to another, there are these fees.
Yeah.
So you have realtor fees or marketing fees. So if you're going to sell for sale by owner, you may not use a realtor, but you're going to need to have marketing fees. Right. There's negotiating percentages, because not everybody pays full asking price. There's repair or inspection costs, usually to satisfy the buyer after an inspection, or a bank after inspection, because a bank is not going to loan money on a house that doesn't have heat.
Right.
Legal fees, conveyance tax, which is the city and the state each charge usually about 0.5%.
Yeah.
And it's really, you ever go to a car dealership and buy a car and they say that there's dock fees and they're $400? It's the same thing. Now, I owned a car dealership for 27 years. It was great so if I sold 30 cars a month and I made $500 per car, how much is that? That's 15 grand of me just using it to pay my staff to do the paperwork.
Yeah.
It's a profit center, right? So convenience tax, title insurance, surveys, that kind of stuff. So let me do it again. So it's realtor fees or marketing, negotiating percentage, repair or inspection costs, legal fees, conveyance tax, title insurance, surveys, planning and zoning, any of that kind of stuff is considered closing costs. Cool. So I'm not quite sure. John is saying the problems are their lists, realtors, attorneys, etc., is to seek out. Not sure what he's talking about. I'll have to explain. All right, let's move on. Counter offer.
Okay.
Buyer makes an initial offer to seller. So who makes the offer, Pete?
The buyer,
Why?
because he's trying to buy the property.
He's interested and wants to give a proposal.
Right. And the seller probably has a price. They usually do. And he's not just going to pay that. So he makes another offer of something less usually. You're going like this. You're shaking.
No. Why are you doing that? You're confusing everything. So that don't listen to what Peter just said, because I don't know what he just said. So the seller doesn't have to have a price. He doesn't have to have any number at all for you to make an offer.
Right.
An offer is technically what the buyer is willing and wants to pay for a house. And it's not always the price. Sometimes it's terms.
Oh, right.
Right? It's not always just the price. Sometimes it's price. Usually when we negotiate, it's price, the payments, and the time it takes for us to pay.
Sure.
And or a deposit if they require
one. Mm-hmm.
So the buyer makes initial offer to seller, and then seller counters that by saying, I'm not willing to accept that. I need this much to sell.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But it has to be initiated by a counter offer has to be initiated by the buyer. Is that what you were saying before?
Yeah. Yeah. Skip the other part. The buyer puts in an offer.
Yeah. So basically, what I'm trying.
Right.
What's that?
Like your friends in Texas, the boys in Texas, they're just sending offers.
Yeah. So the point that I want to make sure you don't listen to Pete about, and it's not no disrespect for you, is the seller doesn't have to have a price.
Yeah.
The offer does not need a price.
Mm-hmm.
So the buyer proposes, hey, I'm willing to do this. And then the seller says, no, but I'll do this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the counter offer. Okay.
Yep.
So you got to be careful with that because it starts like midway through. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Here we go. You ready?
Sure.
Deed in lieu of foreclosure.
I've seen that, but I have no idea.
Yeah, that's why we're doing this podcast, right?
Yeah, I've seen that. Deed.
When a buyer defaults on a loan, okay, if there is no equity or profit for the buyer to realize, in other words, get,
mm-hmm.
the lender can do a deed in lieu of. And the in lieu of means instead of a foreclosure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so hear this out, and we'll cover this, I'm sure, next week. Foreclosure is the lender suing for the deed back when there's equity or profit for the buyer in the property. Mm. So if you're the lender, Peter, and I own a piece of property and I owe $75,000, but it's worth $100,000, because you're the lender, you could strong arm me or steal the house so you can go make the $25,000 profit. All you have to do is say, hey, listen, you get a check in the mail and throw it in the garbage and say, I never received the check, now you're late. And I'm going to foreclose. I mean, that's being facetious, but it could happen.
Sure.
And the reason why you're doing that is because you want to steal the property from me and grab the equity and go sell it.
Mm.
Right?
Yeah.
So if there is a profit in the house or even thought to be a profit in the house, you have to go to foreclosure court. That's the definition of foreclosure, is going to the court. And the judge has to look at all the data and say, I've had enough opportunity to realize my profit. And that you, Mr. Lender, can now take this property back with the profit.
Mm.
So there's a legal procedure to make sure you do not steal my equity. Right? That is a foreclosure proceeding. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's got to be fair. So the money guy doesn't steal the paupers or the little guy or the middle class's money, their profit.
Right.
So what happens is if there is not any equity in a house, or it's worth less than what it's worth. Let's say it's worth $100,000 and I owe $120,000.
Yeah.
The bank can say, I'll do a deed in lieu of. In other words, I could deed the bank the house back and totally shortcut the foreclosure process.
Right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Sure.
Okay, good. Due on sale clause is the next term. Oh boy. Due on sale clause. Now we all hear about this, especially when it comes to subject to deals.
Uh-huh.
And believe me, I could talk about this for one whole podcast, but we won't.
Mhm.
Due on sale clause. When lenders give loans using real estate as collateral, the due on sale clause says if the deed changes names, the lender can call the loan due in full. There are many misconceptions that there is a real problem with this clause in creative real estate and that these deals can't be done.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so all I'm going to say here before I read the rest of this is there are, with the bank, acceptable ways to change the name on the deed and unacceptable ways to change the name on the deed.
Mm.
Okay?
Okay.
That's all I'm going to say. Remember what I said before. There's four names that could be on. There's four names, which is the title. Remember we talked about the rights to own the deed. So there's four titles that could actually go on a deed, and that's a person's name. That's an entity like LLC, S corporation, C corporation, anything like that. Then 3 is a partnership, and 4 is a trust. So what we do in our subject to deals is we actually take the property out of the person's name and put it into a trust, and that's an acceptable way of not triggering a due on sale clause.
Yep.
Okay. So in actual life, as long as the lender is getting payments, they don't care. Okay. The finance documents don't say anything about whether or not they care, by the way.
No.
Right? They don't say that you need to get specific payments from a specific person. They just say the payments need to be made. They don't say from where.
Yep.
They just say they need to be made. It only has language about if you commit any act that doesn't pay or violates the contract that triggers the lack of performance, like not paying monthly.
Yeah.
It's the only language in the contract.
Hmm.
So if you take title to a deed and you own or in charge of or taking responsibility of this property, and you violate or trigger the performance, the lack of performance of the contract, that's when the problem's going to happen. But if you take over or take the responsibility and you keep paying those obligations or keep making those obligations, it never happens. The bank wants interest.
Right.
They don't want real estate. They will take real estate, and they do make a lot of money on the real estate, which most people don't know, which is another podcast. Right? Just read the Creature from Jekyll Island. You don't even need to read it. Go on YouTube and just watch the video.
Yeah.
It's amazing what you would see. But the bottom line is that when a bank gives a loan for $100,000, they send page 38 of the documents is actually a document that says that they should get 10 times their amount of money. So when you take a loan out for $100,000, they go to the federal government, and the federal government gives them $1 million. Why do they do that? Because when they print money, when the United States Treasury prints money, it has to circulate the money. That's how they circulate it. It's a 10-to-1 ratio. So technically, the bank gets a $100,000 loan, and they get $1 million to relend. That million turns into 10 million. So our monetary system is backed by debt.
Yep.
Okay, so just to show you what kind of thievery it is, they're coming after us if we default on the 100,000 and ringing us out on the 100,000, taking us to court, making us pay, when actually they got paid for it 10 times over again.
Right. And they take that money that they got and they lend it to the rest of us for more interest. They didn't
Right.
pay a dime for the money. They're making money out of thin air.
By the way, if you and I did this, Peter, they have a name for that in the English language.
Shylock.
Yeah, Charlotte is definitely one of them.
Well,
It's organized crime.
yeah.
Right? Racketeering.
My son worked for the bank. My wife did too, but my son was at the bank, and all they wanted him was to get loans.
Yeah.
Talk to people about mortgage. He just wanted to be a teller. Like, it was so aggravating. And you think the bank wants the $75,000? What do they want that for? What are they going to do with it?
Right.
They want the interest, so that it's making money. So yeah,
That's
you
right.
don't worry about that clause. Just do what Bill says. We have the subject to technique, and it works out fine. They get paid.
By the way, like I said, when I finish my book, which should be probably in another month or so, it'll be the only one in the market that will explain all this. It'll be the only one. It won't be a $20 book either, by the way. It's going to be hundreds of dollars. So don't get your hopes up unless you find out that. Earnest money is the next definition. Earnest money.
Mm-hmm.
That means we earned it, right?
I thought it was earnest money, the guy at the gas station.
Yeah. Earnest is money. Yeah. All right. So earnest money. This is the cash deposit that is made by a potential or proposed buyer when you sign the purchase and sales agreement we talked about earlier. Now here's the definition. You ready?
Yeah.
It is evidence of good faith intention on the part of the buyer to complete the transaction. It is evidence of good faith intention on the part of the buyer to complete the transaction. So you're buying a $200,000 house and you give a $100 deposit. What does that say about your intention of completing the transaction?
Well, you're $100 real on it.
Okay, what does it say about the intention?
Well, that you have intention to do it. You're starting the process. You're starting to put money into it. You're not just wasting time faking it.
Okay, so I don't think so. I think $100 means that you're not very serious. If you put down $1,000, you're a little bit more serious. If you put down $25,000, then you're really serious.
So is that the 100 is like what we use for options just to start a process. So is this the same as the deposit when you purchase a house? Is it the same as that?
So let me read to you the definition again. Earnest money. This is the cash deposit that is made by a potential or proposed buyer when signing the purchase and sales agreement. It is evidence of good faith intention on the part of the buyer to complete the transaction.
Got it. Okay. What happens is we don't call it that when you and I talk, and I don't even know what it says on the contract because you do most of that stuff. So that line on the contract, I don't know if it says deposit or earnest money because we don't do that.
Desiree says, "Boo, you sneeze because you're allergic to bullshit." Thank you, Desiree.
Desiree, didn't I tell you we would go to have lunch sometime? I can't do that.
All right. So my point is this: like in the apartment building business, there's like standards, like not standards, but rule of thumb. Like for example, I would never put a contract in on a house, a purchase sales contract on a house without less than $1,000 deposit. Yeah. It's just customary.
Yeah.
With the apartment buildings or commercial, it's usually 1% of the sale.
Yep.
So like we're buying a 6-family for $377,000, we would put down $3,700.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Here's the thing: if the contract's written correctly, you get that money back.
Right.
You don't lose it unless you do stupid things. And which, by the way, that's called the money going hard.
That one I remember.
So what that means is the deposit that you have put up for your intention to buy the purchase, if you drag your feet too long or if you do something wrong, mostly don't perform, then that means the seller will get that money and they don't have to return it.
Right.
For tying them up and wasting their time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it's kind of off topic here, but Lone Star says tried wholesaling and got discouraged. Now I'm thinking about using 203K loans. Thought on this. A 203K loan is fine. That's a renovation loan. So my daughter has done those. If the only thing with that Lone Star is, if you're going to do 203 loans, you're going to have to live in the properties. So you're going to have to follow the who is it? Bigger Pockets Burr method, which is where you buy the house, you live in it, you renovate it, and then you sell it later. But if you're going to do that, you're going to have to live in the property. Okay. All right, next, Peter. You ready?
Yeah.
Easements. This is a major source of misunderstanding about real estate. An easement is the legal right of one party to travel across the property of another party. It is usually where the owner of the property grants the right to another to use a portion of his land or property. Okay, so this most common happens when you have a house and it's got land behind it. And you want to put a building lot back there. They want to build a house behind you because there's 2 acres back there.
Yeah.
So you'll have to grant the buyer in the back an easement so they can put a driveway in and drive across your property and get to their property. Okay.
Yeah.
Has a lot to do with not only the rights of who. So if you get into some, like what was the big fight down west with the hillbillies? What was that called?
Poison the.
Yeah, who was the other?
The Haskells, I forget. There was 2 families that were fighting.
The McCoys and somebody else, yeah. And they went on.
McCoys and the Hatfields.
The McCoys and the Hatfields, thank you. So, they fight for years over something stupid like this.
Yeah.
Right. That's why it's put in legal. It's posted on the deed.
Yeah.
Right. So it follows the deed wherever it goes. So if you made that easement in 1909 and 2009, it's still going to be there. And every person that acquired that deed or had the title to that deed would honor that easement. Okay, because it becomes part of the title, which then brings us to the next term, which is encroachment. And this is different than an easement because here's an actual structure on your property that crosses over the legal property line of another. So, of course, it's always an adjacent property. So back in the day, the farmer would put up a barn and think his property line is a certain place when it's not, and then find out after he's built the barn that he's like 10 feet over or 100 feet over his property line, and it's on somebody else's property. So you would think that you would have to make that person take that barn down. Well, you can make a deal with him. Often it's, sometimes you'll say to the guy, give me 10 grand and you can have an encroachment. And what you do is you bring an attorney in to write an encroachment on the deed, and you file it on the deed saying that you are satisfied with that person doing that. Whether you got paid for it or whether something else happened, who knows what the deal is that you made, but you allowed it.
Right.
So you're telling the farmer he doesn't need to take his barn down. Now, can an easement or an encroachment be changed? Yes, but I've not seen it done easily. So if there's a new owner, then it could be changed, but there's a whole process on how to do that, and that's done with planning and zoning. A lot of hearings, a lot of surveys, and actually an engineer is the one that will tell you whether you can do that or not, which I have used in the past. They cost $2,000-$3,000. They come in, they survey the land, and they tell you based on the city's laws or the town's laws what you can and can't do.
Sure.
Okay. Am I being too dry?
Okay? Yeah, it's okay. Well, these are so here's the thing. These are important. If you buy a piece of property, I remember we had a piece of property. We looked in back and it looked like there was a whole lot in back and a street back there. We're thinking, if we can buy this one, we can sell that lot or build something on it or get a builder to build something. But we needed something else to get to it, an easement, and it was a bit of a mess. So you have to know these things if you run into these kind of situations, whether it's dry or not. It's money. It's work. It isn't like, TV shows here. It isn't look at the pretty pink house I just made. These are important.
Let me make that simple for you. That example you were talking about, the guy was asking a higher number for the house because he's telling us there was building lots in the back.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we actually, because it's hearsay, because he thinks there's a building lot, but when you actually go to the planning and zoning and you go to the tax man and you go down to the town hall and spend a couple hours like we did, you find out it's not going to be the way he thinks it's going to be. And all these terms come into play.
Yeah, so that's important. This is business. This isn't. I don't care if it's sexy. It's important.
And because of us, he was able to sell that property a different way because we educated him on our dime because we did buy it.
Yeah.
Next word is equity.
Here we go.
Okay. Believe it or not, there are two ways to use this term. So there's investment equity or cash equity, like I mentioned earlier. Investment equity is the difference between the full market value. You with me?
Yeah.
Of said property and what is owned on the property. So full market value is what the said amount is. That's the appraised amount.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it should be worth. It could be worth. It might be worth. Remember when we talked about appraisal, we said opinion, right?
Opinion, exactly.
Cash equity is what we have left from the closing table once we sell the property, right? And the money's brought to the closing table. So it's like we're getting $200,000 on the closing table. Picture a bag of cash for $200,000, and it gets divvied up from there.
Right.
So the $200,000 is the actual equity cash or cash equity, right?
Okay.
So let me read that again. So cash equity is what we have left from the closing table once we sell the property. It includes the conditions and surroundings, the environment, or market condition, often influences the sale from the full market value.
Mm-hmm.
So let me give you a perfect example of that. It's appraised for $200,000. I'm sorry, the market value or the comps are $200,000.
Mm-hmm.
But the bank will only lend us $180,000. So the full market value is $200,000, but the bank, because it's the 1989 when interests were double digits and they were really worried about their money, right? They only want to lend 80% loan to value ratio, or 70% or 60%, right?
Yeah.
Another classic way that we use this is hard money lenders, right? So cash equity is what the hard money lender uses, not the full market value. So full market value is also what we call ARV, after renovated value.
Right.
So full market value is similar to ARV.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So there's two types of equity. There's investment equity and there's cash equity. So equity is the amount of money that's left from the closing table after you pay all the bills and everything that's owed on the property. It's actually the profit.
Right.
Equity in any other business is called profit. In real estate, it's called equity.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right.
Is that good? We
Yeah.
good?
Yeah.
Escrow. This is the process. This is the process in which we have multiple parties involved in a transaction. The escrow part means there is a third party that has their hand in the deal, or you hand off the documents to them, right? The money to them, right, etc., to execute the agreed upon action set forth by the multiple parties already set in the deal. An escrow agent just follows instructions provided from the escrow agreement. So you're the seller, I'm the buyer. You're worried about me making payments, especially on a subject to deal. We could have an escrow company come in. That's a third party, puts their hands in on the deal. We write up an agreement between you, the seller, and me, the buyer, saying this is what I'm going to do. I give that document to the escrow company and they manage that document. So I pay the third party escrow company, and the escrow company then pays you, pays the insurance, pays the taxes. They have no personal, usually no personal interest in the deal other than their fee.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a safe way to make sure the money's going to get paid. So a lot of times where you'll hear this saying is, your mortgage payment is in escrow, the taxes and the insurance. So you pay your mortgage company, they're the bank, they want principal and interest, they don't want the tax money. Mm-hmm. So they don't want that money in their checkbook messing them up, because every time they go to check their balance in their checkbook, they're going to be like, well, how much is taxes and insurance? We got to deduct that from all of our borrowers.
Mm-hmm.
So what they do is they set up an escrow company. So when you pay them, a certain portion of that payment goes into the insurance escrow, and a certain amount of that goes into the tax escrow. Mm-hmm. So when you take over a mortgage, or when you have a mortgage, you have an escrow account that accumulates the taxes and the insurance. The money just sits there. So now at the end of the year, when the taxes are due, they take the money out of that escrow account and they pay the taxes because it was set aside. Mm-hmm. It's like a reserve account, right? Yep. Or they take the insurance and they set it aside. Mm-hmm. You can also do that on our creative deals, especially if you have a seller that's worried about you paying. You tell them we can get an escrow company.
Cool.
Okay? We got one more, and then we're going to get out of here because we're 6 minutes over 90 minutes. So
okay.
Eviction. This is the legal action by which a tenant is forced to vacate the premises of the named property. Right? The tenant has rights. So a landlord cannot make a tenant to leave for any old reason because he's feeling discontent. Mm-hmm. Okay. Sometimes tenants are in compliance and landlords will try to create inhabitable conditions like shutting off the water or the utilities or the electric or the gas, changing door locks, etc. I mean, I've heard landlords tell me that all the time, right? This is called a constructive eviction, and they're illegal.
Yeah, that doesn't sound kosher.
Yeah. So evictions are, again, in court. The reason why is to make sure that the landlord is not trying to manipulate the renter or overpower him or overpower them with his money or her money. They're doing the right thing. They're getting evicted because an agreement was broken, usually a financial agreement, but there's some, I've seen people evicted for having too many cars in the yard, or they're running a repair shop, auto repair shop in the backyard. I mean, there's a lot of reasons for evictions other than money.
Yeah.
Right? Problems with neighbors, they manipulated the property, like they took down the walls and didn't refinish. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons for evictions. Mm-hmm. But more importantly, it's done in a court so that it's not a constructive eviction, which is illegal. That's not the landlord forcing the tenant out by using his power and his money. Okay.
Yep. Makes sense? Yeah, I never heard of those. I can imagine those, but I can't imagine you can get away with that because, if I did that to a tenant, they would call the housing authority or somebody pretty fast. And I just can't imagine people thinking they can get away with that. That's pretty weird.
Right. Well, here's the thing: in the middle of the winter, like it is, by the time the housing authority and everybody gets involved, you can string it along so they're so uncomfortable they have to move out.
Yeah.
Well, Peter, we covered a lot of stuff today.
Up to E.
Yeah, and we only got up to the E's. That's right.
It's not halfway, is it?
So I hope so. I'm going to see what happens next week. But next week we're going to continue and hopefully get to the rest of the alphabet. But we'll see what happens. I hope the listeners enjoyed this. I hope you enjoyed this. It seems a little dry, but I think once we're all done, and like I said, I get it transcribed, it'll be a nice piece of work because, I mean, just like what happened. I mean, it happened to me. There was a couple words in there I didn't even know. We had to look up. I mean, we had to go after what is collusion? I knew what that meant, but and some other words there we had to look up.
Yeah, me too. But that's the point. It's very, very real. But this is how you and I do it, and I hope other successful people do. You just stop, check it out, and you continue. If you don't, you'll get lost and you'll quit. You'll stand up, walk away, and not do something. You'll just give up.
And I meant what I said at the beginning of the show. This is technically the reason why I'm doing it is because this is the quantum leap that most investors need to make.
Yeah.
So I made a statement a very long time ago that when I structure a deal, I'm looking at the paperwork in my mind and I'm trying to figure out how to do the paperwork. Well, this is what I'm trying, because I understand these words and how they work. I know where my limits are. I know how I can bend them and twist them and turn them to my advantage because I understand them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, all these years later, I realized that, we should have done this a long time. It should have been one of our first podcasts. You know what I mean?
Well, we do explain as we go, hopefully, in different podcasts. But having everything in one place like this is important because that's how you use it as a professional. Yeah. How about the new guy who hasn't done a deal yet? He's just worried about looking at the contract. He's just scared. Yeah. Doesn't want to look at it. That's because he doesn't understand the damn thing, and it's only words. So this is important, folks. Yeah. Just play with the words, look at them, read them. You'll be all right.
Cool. All right, so I'm going to go over now. Please make sure you go subscribe to us if this is your first time or if you've never been here before. Subscribe to us. Make sure you go give us a review. You can go to flippinghousesforrookies.com. On the top of the page, there's a support section there. If you have any questions, you can send me a support ticket. Also on the top of the page, you'll find testimonials. If you would love to give me a testimonial so we know how good of a job we're doing, I put those on my website. I would love that. And we've got dozens and dozens and dozens of testimonials on the website. So I read every one of them. I actually approve them to go on the website. So please go do that. If you're one of those listeners that have never been to my website or just keep listening to podcasts, I would love the exchange for you to actually help us out. The other thing is in your description, there's a link there. Wherever you're watching us or listening to us, there's a description there that takes you to our free stuff page. Just go there. There's over 25 different documents and videos and scripts and checklists and all kinds of stuff there that you can get for free. And lastly, what was lastly? I forgot what it was. We record this podcast every Thursday morning, 9:30 Eastern Standard Time, give or take, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you would like to participate in the podcast, you can go to YouTube or you can go to Facebook and you could put in the comments your questions as you heard me answer some of them today, or we talk about them. Just put them in the comments of YouTube or Facebook and we'll answer your questions while we're live. Okay? So, Peter, I'm at an hour and 42 minutes, which is 12 minutes more than I want to be. So I'm just going to end the podcast and tell everybody we'll see you next week. Make sure you listen to this puppy a few times and you write down some of those definitions so you have a little book for yourself. Okay? Over and out. See you next week.